whatever you want.
Yeah.
You might get a little heat from Nancy.
I had little. You don't know what little heat is.
All right, so you recording? Yep. Cool. I might just use that for something. All right, so we are out at Garrison Brothers with the father of Texas whiskey,
Nice.
Dan Garrison. And I got to tell you before we talk here a little bit, this has been an incredible experience. Garrison Brothers has been something that I've been more and more of a fan of over the last few months and year. And just being out here has really cemented that a little bit and really given me a perspective on the family that is the Garrison Brothers and how you guys are really doing it right. The American spirit and trying to keep everything as local as possible and take care of people, and it's just been really impactful to be out here. So you told us earlier a little bit about the moment that you came out here and got this land, and I was hoping you'd maybe tell us that again.
Sure.
About when that happened.
Joanna, are you hearing them talk in the background?
I'm trying to get their attention to be quiet. I don't think so. I think it's gonna...
It should be okay. It should be okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. I edit the crap out of these, so don't worry about it.
So I was swimming with some friends down here, and it was like Memorial Day weekend or something like that. And one of my friends said, "Hey, I've got a place if you're looking for land out here." And I said, "Well, I am. I want to be somewhere between Johnson City and Fredericksburg because that's the wine trail, and that can mean a lot of traffic to the business because we knew for the first 5 years of the business we were not going to have any revenue coming in whatsoever. We were waiting for the bourbon to age before we could sell it, right?" So that's what we did. We waited and we waited and we waited. But when I first came up to visit this friend of mine's land, by the way, never buy land from a friend of yours.
Okay, duly noted.
Makes the relationship way more difficult going forward. But I came up here in the middle of the night, and I had maybe a bottle of Jack Daniels in my truck and sat on the hillside over here looking around at the 360-degree views that you see behind us and in front of us on all sides. And I started sketching what it might look like to have a barrel barn where we could have events and build a deck on the back of it so that we could have dinner outdoors. And that's what you're looking at behind us here is that's the barrel barn. And I'll always remember building this thing because we built it from scratch. We built it by hand. And it was the first building, and it was exactly where I pictured it being on that subway napkin back in the day when I was sketching out the property. And I put, I went down and looked at that little cabin down there where we ended up, our family living for so long. And I got emotional and excited about it. And I knew that if I could make this piece of land work for the distillery, there's lots of issues to tackle. How much water can you get from a place like this? We had a well that was generating 3.6 gallons per minute. That's it, and it was the well was drilled in the 1960s or 70s. We didn't know anything about it or how to explore it. How much water could we actually get? And that's where I got this concept of maybe we harvest rainwater and we collect rainwater. How expensive is that going to get? And unfortunately, I did it right at the same time that lots of companies were opening up and building rainwater collection tanks, and lots of companies were starting to get into that business. I went over and I met with a guy named Richard. I can't remember his last name, but he lived in Dripping Springs, and he started Richard's Rainwater. Mm-hmm. And I saw how he put the whole thing together, and he's moved off from that business now and is retired, I believe, and sold it to somebody else. But I saw how all the tanks work and the filtration works and the reverse osmosis systems he was using to filter the water. And I thought to myself, that's what we're going to do. And so every single time we build a building, if you look at this barn next to us, that's pretty, like a 32,000 square foot building. That's a lot of ceiling. That's a lot of rooftop to collect from. Right. And so that feeds the drains, and the drains go underground, and they feed the tanks that are on the other side. And we have like 450,000 gallons of rainwater collection capacity here. So we get 1 inch of rain, that's 55,000 gallons of water. And the funny thing is I just came from a hearing last night for another distillery that's trying to open up closer to Fredericksburg. And they're asking to take their runoff water and put it into the Pedernales River. And I'm like, sorry, man, you got to suffer like I suffered through.
Let me have it.
Figure it out on your own. You don't get to pollute our rivers. So that's not going to happen at Garrison Brothers. I mean, where could we go? We're earthbound. We got nowhere to go with the water. There's no streams or creeks to pump it into, and you can't pump it into the ground. The ground only accepts so much sediment from human waste. So we tried to be a very environmental business from the get-go, and we still are today, from reusing the wood on the siding that we have on the barn over there to collecting all the rainwater, to using irrigation. Todd, our master distiller, came up with this ingenious contraption that actually waters all the grass over there, and he's using the condensation water that forms on the fermentation tanks.
Really?
It forms on the side, and it drips down into a tank, and he captures that water and uses it to wash the trees. To water the trees.
Well,
Pretty cool.
you guys' innovation and the pioneer spirit and just that fearless, just coming out here, standing out here, and then just going, here's what we're going to do. And the imagination and the creativity is one thing, and you're obviously a very creative and you have a huge imagination for what could be possible. But to go at it fearlessly, and I think it really embodies the Texas spirit here. And for you guys to come out here and then just become who you have become, you and Nancy, to become the heart and soul of the beginning of this thing that is now such a giant and impressive thing that is continuing to grow. It's just it's inspiring to me to be out here and see how this all integrates into the land. It is part of this landscape that we're in here and what you guys are doing, and the message is incredibly inspiring. The responsibility is incredibly inspiring, and the way you describe the way that you want to make bourbon, and I want you to share that with us real quick. What your just base philosophy is for what are we doing here at Garrison Brothers? What are we going to continue to do at Garrison Brothers, regardless of what the industry does or the market does, or this is what we're doing.
Conrad, you know me well enough by now to know that I'm going to evade that question and come back to it in just a minute.
All right, fair enough.
You can't be a dreamer without a thinker like Joanna or a thinker like Nancy.
Agreed.
Who takes a lot of the pain off of your back and puts you in a position where you can go dream.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have her doing that. So the first thing that I did is I wrote a mission statement and core values for the business. And to this day, they are still the core values in the mission statement for the business. And the mission statement's really simple. We're going to make the highest quality, finest tasting bourbon in the world. Once you set that as your bar, you can only set higher bars down the road. And we can't just make good bourbon the first time. Got to make better bourbon the next time and better bourbon the next time. And I think from your interviews with Donis, you've probably learned that philosophy. He propels that philosophy here at the distillery, and everything that we do, every aspect of the business, is to do it right and do it well, and not to cut corners. I would be as rich as Tito Beverage today if I had gone out and bought bourbon from Kentucky and sold it in a Texas-shaped bottle, and that would have done really well, and we'd be loaded. But instead, we're flat broke and sitting on a gold mine.
Yeah, that's what I described. Well, and when you say that thing about making the best possible, it strikes me as something that it's never a goal you're going to achieve. It's always something that you try to aspire to, and it always moves because you're never going to perfect it. Yeah. It's never going to end. It's always going to be the next
10 yards further and 10 yards further and 10 yards further.
And that was really Donis's spirit of the whole thing. And I'd love to see your passion, man. I'd love to see you just really that emoting that your passion for this whole thing and for Nancy. And I feel the same way about my wife, obviously, but that's so important. And that's really what has drawn me to Garrison Brothers. Is I got that sense, and you guys have just reaffirmed that 100%. That not only are you making a great thing that sits on the shelf, it's impactful, but you guys are so much of the story now for me that has just made it more in a way that nobody can duplicate. There is nobody that is going to come along, and I keep looking over here at Nancy sitting in the background there, that's going to come along and beat Garrison Brothers or take over Garrison Brothers or push on, because they're not you, plain and simple. There is only one, and you guys are doing it in a way that's just can't be redone because the story is so unique to the two of you, and you are an incredible individual. Dan,
way too complimentary.
Man, I've been inspired to meet you, and it's been really great. And you guys embody the American spirit in a way that I didn't anticipate.
Well, so does Kentucky. You've spent some time in Kentucky,
I have.
And when Wild Turkey burned to the ground, all the other distilleries came to their aid and let them use their warehouse space. When Heaven Hill burned to the ground, the largest bourbon source in America at the time, burned to the ground. And they were able to rent space at the Brown-Forman plant to produce bourbon for the next 10 years. And they helped each other out. And that's the same approach that we've taken with the Texas whiskey business and the Texas whiskey industry. We started the Texas Whiskey Association. And there's no cutthroat politics going on. There's no name games. There's no bad-mouthing other Texas distillers. We're a team, and we're trying to compete with the greatest bourbon producing state in North America, and we're doing it.
Yes,
And
yes, you are.
That's pretty fun.
So I would be probably scolded and missed out if I didn't ask you about your high stakes charity event that you guys got going on. You guys doing a lot of charitable things. I didn't realize how much charitable events that Garrison Brothers does, and I think that's incredibly. The philanthropy is really important to try and give back when you can. So will you tell me just real briefly about what the high stakes charity event is about?
Sure. Well, Nancy and I are members of the Texas Restaurant Association, and I've been on that board for, I'm serving my 4th year now, so it's a 2-term limit type situation, so I might be on the board granted emerita status. Don't say anything about being a granddaddy.
Would never.
But we'll see how that turns out. But for the last year that we're on it, we decided we really want to focus on raising money from the high stakes event, which is a great event. It's an evening time event, and it's down low by all those trees that we've planted. And there's 14 different bartenders there making cocktails, and there's 13 chefs from the best restaurants in Texas participating. The Texas Beef Council donates the steaks that we use. It's just a great partnership, and we'll raise, I'm hopeful, maybe $35,000 to $50,000 for the Texas Restaurant Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the Texas Restaurant Association. And the Texas Restaurant Foundation does great things, like it takes inmates that are housed in our lockup facilities around the state and gives them a chance to join the restaurant industry when they get out. They actually do training at the prison systems, and I think that's a wonderful thing. They teach high school kids why they would want to be a bartender, or why they would want to be a chef, or why they would want to be a mixologist, because COVID screwed up the food industry in the United States. And I mean, I can remember going out so many times, you'd sit there and you'd get served by a waiter, and the waiter was all proud of everything that he was bringing out. And it was a big production, and everybody was kind to you and generous and sophisticated, and they acted like they were gentlemen or ladies that were serving you. And we've lost a lot of that in this country. It's all fast food and get up and go, got to turn tables, that sort of thing. And hopefully we can bring back that elegance to the restaurant business, and that's what the Texas Restaurant Association does. They're bringing young people into that industry.
It's important. When is that exactly?
October 5th, I believe. I think it's October 5th. Be from 6 o'clock to 9. Come back and visit us.
We're going to be back in October, so you be careful. I might take you. You got to be careful about inviting me to anything, because you never know when I might show up and go, hey, Dan, remember when you said?
Yeah, you'll love this event. We'll raise a lot of money, but you got to buy a big charity auction item.
Okay, and a hat and some boots.
And a hat and boots.
100%.
Sure.
It was too hot today to do that, but I will do that. I will do that next time.
I understand.
Well, listen, I know you got other things you got going on, because you guys are actually doing some charitable stuff tonight. But I appreciate it. You just so everybody knows, Nancy and Dan have spent the entire day with us in scalding heat. It is brutal out here right now. We're faking it.
Company well kept.
It's
Really enjoyed it.
well, I told Nancy earlier, we consider this as an opportunity. We've made some new friends, and I will come back just to visit with y'all if we don't drink a dang thing, because you guys have not disappointed one little bit, and I appreciate you a ton.
Hey,
so,
it's great to
Dan,
have you here.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, if you don't know about Garrison Brothers, for God's sake, will you please just check it out, just try it. If you do just a little bit of investigating, it's gonna change the way you think about Texas whiskey, and certainly about this man right here with his name's on the bottle.
Hope so.
So,
thanks for being here too, Joanna.
thanks, Dan. All right.